Hi, welcome to a special virtual presentation of the 2021 London Swine Conference. I'm Teresa Van Ray, your LSC chair and a very proud pork producer from Huron County. Last year, we marked our 20th conference. Since 2001, the London Swine Conference has helped connect producers, researchers, industry, and policymakers across our pork sector. It's an important opportunity to share science-based information that helps each of us do our part to make our businesses and industry stronger. So we all know that chatting with each other face to face and having that cup of Java, the odd glass of hops, or fermented grapes, my favorite, it's such a huge part of learning from each other and, well, a lot of fun. Remember, fun? Not sure about you, but I've not exactly felt in control of a lot in my life lately. However, knowledge is power. Knowledge can help us gain back some of the control we all need to have success. While we aren't able to gather this year in person, we are excited to bring you a series of live and on-demand presentations from people at the top of their fields. We are one of the many phenomenal industries that have continued to produce food for the world throughout this past year. For that, thanks to each and every one of you and your families. So, sit back. We invite you to enjoy this virtual presentation. And I, for one, look so forward to seeing each and every one of you face to face and celebrating with you in 2022.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the London Swine Conference video series. And my name is Terri O'Sullivan, and I'm a member of the London Swine Conference Organizing Committee. And just before we begin, I just would like to thank my fellow organizing committee members for all their hard work this past year during this transition to a virtual environment. And I would also like to acknowledge all of our sponsors who have supported this conference. Without our sponsor support, the conference would not be the success that it is. So thank you very much. And it's my pleasure to introduce you to Bob Friendship today. And so welcome, Bob.
Hi, Terri, and hello to everybody else that might be watching this. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
And I'm in my office upstairs virtually, and Bob's in his office downstairs virtually. So we are socially distanced. Many of you, if not all of you, know Bob. And for those of you who don't know Bob, he is a veterinarian and a professor at the Ontario Veterinary College. And I am truly honored to call Bob my colleague, my mentor, as well as my friend. So Bob has made substantial contributions to the Ontario swine industry through his research program and his research publications, and also through his commitment to many continuing education events such as the London Swine Conference. And so yeah, so today Bob and I were just going to chat about the London Swine Conference. And yeah, Bob, so how long have you been involved with the London Swine Conference? Can you share your background with us?
Yeah, so I've been involved with the London Swine Conference from the very beginning. And I have to admit that in 1999, when we were discussing the London Swine Conference or the idea of creating a world-class annual conference for the Ontario industry. And I said, no, we don't need one. We've got lots of swine conferences. We seem to be going to conferences every month through the winter, and then there's the Ontario Pork Congress in the summer, and we really don't need another one. And I have to admit that I was wrong, and I thank Case DeLang for sort of setting me right on this account. That yes, there were lots of conferences, but there wasn't one that I would, say is a world class type of conference that really above the rest, I think, and it's been quite a pleasure every year to attend the London Swine Conference, the the speakers that have been brought in over the years, quite an incredible array of really international superstars, as well as what I've gotten out of the London Swine Conference many times is what talent we have in the province and very locally. That the London Swine Conference has done a very good job of mixing the science, the cutting edge world class science, interspersed with some very practical take home messages, often from producers or feed industry or extension people, that to get that blend right is pretty tricky, I think. And some of the best talks that I've heard are sometimes done by producers and or even graduate students from our university here. So that's something that I think the conference has done a good job of, is getting that blend and making that work. But yes, so to answer your question, you had a question of how long have I been involved, and it has been since the very first London Swine Conference in 2001, and I think I've had some kind of role in every one of the conferences since then.
Oh, thanks, Bob. And there you have it, folks. Bob admitted he was wrong, even just once. So thanks for sharing that, Bob. And yeah, and so like there's founding partners as well, right? So that the founding partners were formed way back in those early talks in 1999.
Yeah, so the London Swine Conference wouldn't have happened without the sort of partnership of Ontario Pork, the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture and Food and Rural Affairs, and the University of Guelph. Those three founding partners all contributed quite substantially to the success. They bring in different talents that and you need that stable base of a group that are going to make sure that it happens, and there's going to be the resources to make it succeed. Mm-hmm. And then later on, the Ontario Pork Industry Council joined to play an essential role in handling the finances and some very practical aspects to it. So that has been that's been a major reason that the conference has succeeded. And the other group that we shouldn't forget about are the industry sponsors that they've been very, very loyal over the years. That's always count on almost the same group. Sometimes changes a little, but there's been solid support by the industry partners to help finance the conference.
Mm-hmm. It is nice, and I know that the founding partners have active representation on the organizing committee, and so it's nice to have that solid base and commitment to the conference, and the same with the sponsors. I agree.
That might be where the ideas for the some of the really original ideas for the program come from, is because the sponsors not just put up money, but they also bring in ideas and suggest speakers, and have quite an active role in the conference.
It's such a great collaborative effort, and that brings a lot of perspective and diversity to the program, for sure, I would say. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So yeah, so way back in 2001 is when the first official London Swine Conference was launched, and gosh, so many things have changed in the world as well as in the swine industry since then, and it's kind of fun to sometimes sad to reminisce about what has changed in the world and in the swine industry from the past 20 years.
Yeah, you get to a certain age, and 20 years is kind of like a blink of the eye, that it happens so fast, and you get caught not realizing that the world has changed so dramatically. And I think if you are in the pork industry, you probably have been knowing that you're working to keep up and stay current, etc. But I don't think that you necessarily realize how far you've come until you look back at 20 years and see what has changed. And thank goodness we have production records that show that in 2001, I'm pretty sure most producers were fairly happy with 20 pigs per sow per year. And I've got PigChamp data that shows that the top 10% were getting 23 pigs per sow per year, I think. And now that same PigChamp data, the top 10% are getting over 30 pigs per sow per year, and just dramatic change.
Yeah, amazing. And even the foreign animal disease challenges over the year, like I remember 2001, we were very concerned about a foreign animal disease, and it just keeps kind of cycling through these different disease challenges as well.
Yeah,
disease was all the concern back in 2001.
I remember the program committee fretting over the fact that the program was already in place and we were set to go. And suddenly the news out of Britain was foot and mouth disease. And there was a lot of talk of that it's going to come to Canada, that we really need to be worried about it. And we didn't have a speaker on foot and mouth disease. So by the following year, I remember Terry Whiting from Manitoba coming to talk about what would happen if we had a foreign animal disease enter our country and the borders suddenly closed. And all the plans for foreign animal disease centers around controlling the disease, getting rid of it, doing that as efficiently and as possible. But we have an industry that exports such a huge portion of its production and can't afford to close borders. And if a disease like foot and mouth disease hits, it could be in a very isolated area, and it could involve sheep or something, not pigs, but the borders would close and pork exports would be stopped. And it may be months and months before they could open again, because I think there's politics involved in all of this. And so very in the last couple of years, the same attention has been about African swine fever. It's some things change, but they don't really change. There's still this problem of foreign animal disease. We're still a major exporter of pork, and it's a disaster if the borders close. That hasn't changed, and it's a really complicated, tough issue. And I know there's been lots of work done on it, but I think it's still scary to think about. And
and thankfully we didn't have foot and mouth disease show up, and hopefully that remains the same with African swine fever. And just think too how COVID has changed everything. It's the borders closed for different types of things, but it also has really affected the industry, and it's a human pandemic.
yeah, it shows how really hard it is for the program committee to predict what the topic is going to be for the next year or the next 10 years. They nobody in the 2019 program warned the pig industry about packers closing down because of a human pandemic. It was completely missed. Yeah,
fire the committee. Kidding.
Missed by everybody.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I'm ready for it to be dialed back in terms of the stress of predicting those types of things, let me tell you. Yeah, and so we've talked about, you know, the past and how we've moved from, you know, more pigs per sow per year and moved from one foreign animal disease onto the next, and all the challenges that they bring. And so what about keeping an eye on the future? Like, I love your Kodak example of you know, how do we spot the future challenges?
Yeah, so I think that if you go through the London Swine Conference proceedings, and I did, looking back over the last 20 years, and I've gone through the proceedings, and it's, yeah, almost every conference, there's a speaker to discuss future technologies, changes, sometimes challenges from society that because consumer perspectives change and these type of things. But and as we've said, the society has changed, and the pork industry has changed and made huge advances. But in all industry, there's always this, I think, worry that there'll be a disruptive change, something that will happen very quickly. And yeah, I like the example of Kodak in 2001. Kodak had purchased Fuji Films, and they essentially had a world monopoly on film and cameras, and they were a very successful business. And on top of that, they had invented the digital photography, really, and had invested a great deal of money in that just in case. So they were looking ahead and trying to predict the future, and but they didn't, I think, completely see what was going to happen when smartphones and internet and everything came together. And Kodak went from this very profitable business to completely bankrupt in 10 years. And yeah, it's because change happens very fast when it happens. And even, you know, a company as well-placed as Kodak, with its experts and its heavy investment in technology, and still was vulnerable for disruptive change. And yeah, I just look at the program and see almost always a speaker that is addressing this kind of worry, the things that could happen, and on the horizon right now. I think that most people are aware that meat has competition. That it used to be that pork just had to worry about poultry and beef, and but there's plant-based or even meat made in a test tube that poses a threat, and also there's just changes in consumer attitudes and perspectives, and lots of competition, and things that could really pose quite a challenge to the pork industry. What I've noticed about the pork industry that I just find amazing is how resilient it is. That there's been lots and lots of challenges that should have caused, real upheaval. And yeah, the Ontario pork industry is bigger and stronger than it was in 2001, and probably in a stronger position than it was then, despite terrible challenges of crazy prices. Just in the past year alone, the roller coaster of prices and challenges it's faced. And so I think if you're on the program committee and trying to think of speakers and looking for these disruptive technologies, and there won't be any shortage of those kind of predictions. And yet, yeah, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen?
We need a crystal ball sometimes, I think. I know that would be nice in certain aspects, is to have a crystal ball perhaps. But yeah, and one thing Bob and I were chatting about before we started recording was, how long it takes to become comfortable standing on a podium to give presentations. And I didn't have a crystal ball to say, Terry or Bob, let's practice speaking to our computers and giving a presentation to each other or to ourselves virtually. That's been quite a change, including the structure of this conference, a virtual conference, bringing us together, and yet a little awkward sometimes when you're the person giving the talk, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I agree. I think this is, and it's also hard, I think, for the listeners, that I have been to conferences and which are a series of webinars or on Zoom, and it's not easy to sit and listen and deal with virtual conferences. I noticed that the London Swine Conference this year has a couple of live sessions, which is kind of nice. So on March the 30th and March the 31st at noon, two presentations that will be live, and I think a chance to ask some questions and that type of thing, which is good. And then the other parts of the conference are download them and watch them whenever you want, which has the advantage of convenience, but it takes some discipline. It's hard to get involved. I'm really looking forward to next year, hopefully next year, where the London Swine Conference will be back to its usual venue. And I really enjoy the chance to talk to people around the coffee areas and at lunch and in the evenings. One of the advantages of a 2-day conference is that if you stay over, there's other people that you can interact with, and there's sometimes good evening sessions. And yeah, we I think really missed that. I didn't realize how important that was, and that another reason to have a conference like the London Swine Conference is that it was a very good venue for discussion. And sometimes in the breakout sessions, if you've organized the breakout session and think you've got a really good program, and you notice that people are staying out in the hall talking and not coming into your session, you feel a little bit annoyed. But I know that that's really important part of the conference, to having coffee and making deals and learning things outside the room just the same as inside the room. So yeah, we haven't been able to make that in a good virtual manner, which is too bad. It's but we'll get back to it, I hope.
Yeah, I hope so too. And thank you, Bob, for sharing your thoughts today and trip down memory lane as to how this all got started, and just circling back to the whole virtual thing. I now have a new appreciation for my students watching lectures online and listening for long periods of time, and so I think you're absolutely right that it is hard to be disciplined and listen. So thank you for that. And I also just wanted to once again thank all of the sponsors. You will notice that their logos have been displayed throughout this presentation, as well as all of the upcoming talks. And so, yeah, Bob, any last words of advice or wisdom that you'd like to share?
Well, I'd just like to encourage people to download those talks and try to attend the noon hour sessions. I think it won't be as easy as being in person, but I think there's those are good speakers, and there's a lot of good points to be picked up there. So I would encourage participation, even though it's a virtual conference this year.
Great. Thank you so much, Bob. And thank you everyone for attending this presentation. And I think I can speak for both Bob and I that we hope you enjoy the conference this year. Bye for now.
Thank you.